the word interest that excites many of us. But when it is to be paid back to the bankers or to the bank, it becomes a difficult prospect. Hello everyone, in this video we'll be talking about the variety of interest, or I would say in mathematics the types of interest that we have to study while we attempt an aptitude paper. Yes, I'm talking about simple and compound interest. Now many people feel that simple and compound interest are formula based topics. I would completely disagree. These are more of conceptual topics. Why? Because many of the questions in aptitude examinations are conceptual based. You will be knowing the formula, but that does not guarantee you a solution to the problem, especially in few seconds. Compound interest questions are usually calculation based topics, and I know, and in fact you also know, that we do not have calculators in hand while we attempt an aptitude examination. So then how do we solve it? In this particular video, we'll be talking about right from what is interest to what is the conceptual difference between simple and compound interest. Then what variety of questions can we expect in an examination, and in the very end I am going to take you through a trick which will solve all your problems, most probably without pen and paper. Yes, you got it right, without pen and paper. So what I'm expecting you to do is watch the complete video, which will help you solve a problem which was probably unsolved or would be unsolved otherwise in less than 10-15 seconds, and that too without pen and paper. So stay tuned for the complete video and enjoy the complete learning in the course of it.
Hello everyone, this is a very interesting video on simple and compound interest. Mind you, there is no exam on aptitude which does not have a question based on simple and compound interest, and I've seen students actually leaving the questions specifically on compound interest. I'll take you through end-to-end concept of simple and compound interest, and we'll practice few more questions around it. So we'll discuss what is the difference between principal, interest and amount. We'll also understand what is the fundamental difference between simple and compound interest. What are the formulas around? What is the difference when an interest is calculated annually, half yearly or quarterly, and some problems on the same topic. So let me take you through the same journey. The first thing that comes to you is the difference between principal, interest and amount. Now, what do you understand by principal? I know these are some very basic terms that we have studied during our school days, but for that we need to understand the differences as well. What is principal? Suppose I borrowed a sum of 500 rupees from the bank. Now this 500 rupees is my principal value, the amount that is borrowed. The bank says that we will be charging an interest of, let's say, 10% per annum. Now per annum is nothing but per year, and this 10% becomes my rate of interest. And the third thing, which is amount. Now amount is going to be the value that I will have to return back to the bank, which definitely should be equal to principal that I borrowed plus the amount of interest for whatever number of years. Now this interest can be both. It can be a simple interest. It can also be a compound interest. So based on the deciding factor, this interest can be SI or CI, but the formula for amount remains the same. It is going to be principal plus interest. I hope this is clear now. Let's understand what is the concept of SI and CI, and also what is the difference between simple interest and compound interest. Now, many students only know the difference between SI and CI in terms of formula. But my dear learners, that's not sufficient enough. So let's understand in detail what is the basic difference between these two concepts. Now I'll take an example to explain this concept. Again, I borrow a certain sum of money from a bank. Let's suppose the borrowed money, that is my principal value, is rupees 100. Now this is a case with both simple and compound interest. The rate of interest which we decided was 10% per annum. Please stay focused since we are not differentiating on the basis of formula, but we are trying to understand the basic difference. Let's say I borrowed the money for 3 years. Now this information remains the same in both the categories. So what happens after the end of first year? After the end of first year, if I have to repay the loan, how much amount will I return? I'll have to return the principal value that I borrowed and 10% of the borrowed amount. This is how we calculate percentage. So 10% of the borrowed amount, which is nothing but 10 rupees from here, because 100 and 100 gets cancelled. So I have to return a total sum of 110 rupees. Now suppose this calculation goes on till the second year. That means after second year, how much will I have to pay? So I have to pay what I borrowed plus 10 rupees of interest from the first year plus 10% of interest on the borrowed amount, which again becomes 10 for the second year, and this total amount becomes 120. What if I actually returned the value after third year? 100 rupees which was borrowed, 10 rupees of interest for the first year, 10 rupees of interest for the second year, and 10% on the borrowed value, that is principal amount. And therefore I have to return a sum of 130 rupees at the end of 3 years. Now this looks very simple. Why? Because every year my interest value was rupees 10 per year. So for 3 years, this interest value becomes 30 rupees. Now this is very simple, and hence I could say that the name of this concept is simple interest. Let's talk about compound interest. As I said, everything remains same. Rate of interest decided by the bank is 10%. Time, again, we'll take it as 3 years so that we can differentiate between the two concepts. Now what happens at the end of first year? I have to return the borrowed value plus 10% of interest on the borrowed amount, and which gives me exactly the same value that I had in case of simple interest, that is 110. Let's see what happens in the second year. 100 rupees that I borrowed, 10 rupees from the first year, and 10%, 10 by 100 on. Now this is the discriminating factor, 10% of the previous year's amount, which is 110. Over here, it was always principal, but over here, it's the previous year's amount. Let's see what do we get. So this is 100 plus 10 plus 11. I end up getting 121, which is certainly different from this value of 120. Let's see what happens in the third year. The third year, 100 rupees that I borrowed, 10 rupees of first year interest, 11 rupees from second year, and 10% on. What should be the value? Yes, this is going to be 121. That's my previous year's amount. 10 and 10 gets cancelled, and 121 by 10 will give me 12.1. So what will be the addition? 100 plus 10, 110 plus 11, 121 plus 12.1, which is 133.1. Obviously, again, these two values will not match, which means my interest for the first year was 10 rupees. My interest for the second year was 11 rupees. My interest for the third year was 12.1 rupees. And as you can see, this keeps on increasing, which means in case of simple interest, it was same for every year. Whereas in case of compound interest, it keeps on increasing as we move ahead. So I can say that simple interest for first year is equal to compound interest for first year. Thereafter, it will always be compound interest more than simple interest. Please understand this fundamental concept is very important in solving many questions when we get in examinations. We haven't discussed the formula so far, but more than the formula, this concept is important. Let's move to the next part, which is your area of interest, and that is the formulas from this particular topic. Now let's see how does the formula look like. Now when I talk about the formula for simple interest, that's my first case. So it is equal to nothing but P multiplied by R multiplied by T, where P stands for my principal value, that is the borrowed amount. My R stands for rate of interest, and my T stands for, obviously this rate of interest is per annum, and my T stands for time in years. Now some of you may think that there was supposed to be 100 in the denominator in this formula. Don't worry, that 100 will anyways come. When I will remove a percentage sign from this R, I will have to put 100 in the denominator. But that does not mean that 100 is part of the formula. Either I can say it is PRT or we can say it is PRT by 100. That's simple interest formula. Let's talk about compound interest now. Now this looks a little different. It is equal to P multiplied by 1 plus R to the whole power T minus P. Yes, this is the formula for compound interest, where P stands for principal, R stands for rate of interest per annum, and T stands for time in years. Again, since this R is in percentage, when I remove the percent sign, I have to put 100 in the denominator. Now, many people actually miss on this part. They usually do not put minus P with the formula. But please understand, if you do not put minus P in the formula, which means if you keep only this much of the formula, this is equal to amount, which is equal to principal plus compound interest. And therefore, this P must come to this side so as to give you a formula of compound interest. This is very important. People tend to miss this formula. Most of the people confuse between or get confused between the formula for principal, or in fact compound interest, and amount. So be careful. For compound interest, this is the formula. For simple interest, this is the formula. Now most of the difficult questions are being asked from compound interest, because in simple interest things do not get difficult. There are four things that we have in the formula: 1, 2, 3, and 4. So out of these four, three of the things will be given to you, and you will be asked to calculate the fourth one. That's it. That's a simple case of simple interest. Whereas most of the good quality question comes from compound interest. We'll see what type of questions do we have. But before that, we should understand one more fundamental concept, and that is, so far we were calculating everything annually. What if the question asks us to calculate things half yearly or quarterly? So like on your screen, you can see that I have got three tabs: one for the annual calculation, another one for half yearly calculation, and the third one for quarterly calculation. And you can see a horizontal box at the top which says simple interest, which means for simple interest, there is no difference in the concept whether we calculate the interest annually, half yearly, or quarterly. Let me take an example. So suppose in case of simple interest, the annual interest was rupees 10. If you remember my first example, it will obviously become rupees 5, that is exactly half, when the interest will be calculated half yearly, and this will become rupees 2.5, which is 1 by 4 of 10, when the interest will be calculated quarterly. So this is the case when simple interest is in picture. Now let's see what happens when we have compound interest. So there are two parameters we have to focus upon: rate of interest and time in years, because principal is a constant value. The amount borrowed is a constant value. So there's nothing that will change in principal. Now what will happen to rate of interest and T, that is time in years? So in case of annual calculation, R remains R and T remains T. And therefore, my formula for compound interest remains P multiplied by 1 plus R by 100 to the whole power T minus P. That's my standard formula for CI. In case of half yearly calculation, my rate of interest becomes half, that is R by 2, and my time becomes double, that is 2t. So my formula for compound interest in case of half yearly becomes P multiplied by 1 plus R by 2 by 100 to the whole power 2t minus P. Now see what has happened here. Suppose my rate of interest was 20% and my time was 2 years. In half year calculation, interest will be calculated after every 6 months. So instead of an annual calculation, after every 6 months, interest would be calculated. So certainly my effective rate of interest should become half of my actual value. And therefore, instead of 20%, it becomes 10%. Whereas my effective time becomes double, because I will have 4 spans of 6 months each. So instead of 2 years, I'll have 4 spans of 6 months each. Remember, I'm not saying it is 4 years, but it is 4 spans of 6 months each. Let's see the impact when it is calculated quarterly. So definitely over here, rate of interest will become R by 4 and effective time will become 4 times of the total given time, which means in this particular case, my rate of interest becomes 5% and my time becomes 8. Now I'm not writing 8 years. These are 8 spans of 3 months each, and hence my compound interest for quarterly calculation becomes principal 1 plus R by 4 by 100 to the whole power 4t minus p. That's how the calculation becomes when it is calculated half yearly or quarterly. We will see some questions based on half yearly and quarterly calculations. Now we have gone through all the conceptual things on simple interest and compound interest. Let's see what we have next. So let's talk about some of the questions that we have. Now in this particular video, I'm not going to cater some simple questions around the same topic. I'll be talking about some good, decent quality questions. Let's see the first question. Find the compound interest earned on rupees 20,000 for 2 years at 10% per annum. First thing is we are using concept of compound interest. Second thing is I need to figure out what are the values. So my principal is 20,000. My rate of interest is given as 10% per annum. And the third thing that I know here is time is equal to 2 years. And what we have to calculate? We simply have to calculate compound interest. So what do? I put the formula compound interest is equal to principal, that is 20,000, multiplied by 1 plus R by 100 to the whole power 2 minus 20,000. Now this looks quite okay because the values are manageable. So I have 20,000 multiplied by, this will be 1 plus 1 by 10, which will become 11 by 10 whole square minus 20,000, which will give me 20,000. 11 square is 121 by 100 minus 20,000. So I'm solving this question conventionally. Though in the examinations, we are not going to do it at all. 121 multiplied by 2 will give me 242,000 minus 20,000. So I end up getting 4,200 as the compound interest. Now this is the conventional method of solving it, but we will not use this method. We will use a very interesting and an important method that is called as the method of successive percentage. And those who have not seen this video, I would recommend you to go through my concept of successive percentage. Specifically, with compound interest into picture, we must know this. So what is the formula for compound interest? That too with successive percentage, it is A plus B plus AB by 100%. Now, as I said, you have to watch my another video which talks about successive percentage in detail. And that's where we can solve this question by using, in fact, by not using pen and paper. So here my A and B are percentage values. So over in this question, for first year, my percentage is 10%. For second year also, it is 10%. So if I calculate successive percentage, it will be 10 plus 10 plus 10 multiplied by 10 upon 100, which gives me 21% as my successive percentage. That is, for 20,000 principal amount, my compound interest will be 21%. And I know that 21% of 20,000 is nothing but 4,200, and that's my answer. So can you see that? Though I solved it with the formula just to explain you, while in examinations, I'm not going to even do this. I know that 10% and 10% gives me 21%, and 21% of 20,000 is 4,200, and therefore I'm straight away going to click the answer rather than using pen and paper or doing it by any other time consuming method. I hope this is clear. Let's talk about some more example. If rupees 2000 amounts to rupees 2880 in 2 years at compound interest, what is the rate of interest per annum if the interest is being compounded annually? So let's calculate the values, but before that I want to know what all things are given here. So what are the given values? I know that principal is given as rupees 2000, amounts to rupees, which means amount is given to me, which is 2880 rupees. Time is given as 2 years, and the only unknown value is rate of interest. Now over here, since I know the amount directly, I can use the formula of amount, which is principal multiplied by 1 plus R by 100 to the whole power t. Now this is again a conventional method. Let's see that. 2880 is equal to 2000 multiplied by 1 plus R by 100 to the whole power 2. Now that makes my question difficult. Why? Because even if I solve it, I end up getting 144 and one of the 0 is gone. So I end up getting 144 divided by 100, which is equal to 1 plus r by 100 whole square. Now luckily 144 is a square of 12, so I can write it, and 100 is a square of 10, so I can write it this way, and therefore I can eliminate the powers from both the sides. And I can straight away write that 12 by 10 is equal to 1 plus r by 100. Upon calculation, r by 100 gives me 12 by 10 minus 1, which is 2 by 10. I am deliberately not removing the values in the denominator so that I can cancel it later on. Okay, so my value for R becomes 20%, and that's my answer to the question, which is option number B. But again, can I not make use of successive percentage concept? I know for successive percentage, I need the values of A and B because that's what the formula was. If you remember in the previous question, we used this formula. But then I literally can utilize the options available in this question. Let's see how. Let me go through the options. My first option is 10%. Now we are calculating it for 2 years. I know that 10% and 10% according to successive percentage is 21%. So 21% of 2000 will give me only 420 rupees. But the difference between 2000 and 2880 is 880 rupees. Therefore, my first option, that is 10%, is incorrect. Now with practice, you will know that 20% and 20% will give you 44%. Now I remember these values because of practice. 44% of 2000, that's my principal value, will be nothing but 880 rupees. And can you see this value over here? Yes. So that's my answer. So do you see that? Instead of a conventional method, my method of successive percentage will give me immediate and guaranteed results. So I would again repeat, I would urge you to watch the video wherein I have spoken or I have discussed successive percentage in detail. Let's take another problem. Find the interest earned in the first year on rupees 4,000 at 20% per annum compound interest, the interest being calculated or compounded half yearly. Now this is different over here. So what happens here? The calculation will be half yearly. So if you remember, what will be the impact? Half yearly will make my rate of interest as half and will make my time as double. Now let's see what is given in the question. Find the interest earned in the first year on rupees 400. That means my principal value is 400 at 20% per annum, and we have to do the calculation for 1 year. Why I am saying 1 year? Because the question says it is to be calculated for first year. So out of these three, principal will remain the same, that is 400. Rate of interest will become R by 2, and that means it will be 10%. And my time will become double, which will be 2. Again, I'm repeating, it's not 2 years, it is 2 spans of 6 months each. Now see how easy can we solve this question. If I do this question with the help of conventional formula, I will have to put all these values, which is 400, 1 plus rate of interest divided by 100 to the whole power 2 minus 400, because I have to calculate only compound interest. So what do I get? Again, it is 400 multiplied by the square for 11 and the square for 10 minus 400. And even if I take 400 as a common value, I end up getting 121 minus 100 by 100. And I can cancel this. So I end up getting 4 multiplied by 21, which is equal to 84 rupees as the answer. Now this is conventional method. Let's see what I could have done after this. After this, I know that 10% for 2 times gives me 21%. So 21% of 400 is 84 rupees, and that's my answer. How come I got 21%? Because of the concept of successive percentage, A plus B plus AB by 100%. That's my overall value. Interesting, easy, and confirm question or confirm answer. Yep. Let's take one more. A sum doubles in 8 years at compound interest. In how many years will the sum become 4 times the original sum if the interest is compounded annually? Now this looks like a difficult question, but for that you need to know the rule of 72, 114 and 144. That's another video that I have already for you. Now, what does that mean? Let's understand. If the value gets doubled, if the value gets tripled, and if the value gets quadrupled, that is 4 times, instead of solving the question with the conventional method, I can use these three numbers, that is 72, 114 and 144. I repeat, I have a complete video on the rule of 72, 114 and 144. You must watch it again. Now what happens? In each of these categories, my rate of interest multiplied by my time will give me these values respectively. 72, 114 and 144. Now let's talk about this question in particular. So the question says a sum doubles in 8 years. So the sum is getting doubled in 8 years, which means if I put R multiplied by time is equal to 72, because this is a case of double, and I know the value of time is 8, I can calculate rate of interest as 9%. Can you imagine? Without putting any formula of compound interest, I got the value of rate of interest, which is 9%. Now the question says in how many years, that means we have to calculate time, will the sum become 4 times? 4 times means this quadruple thing will come into picture. So it says rate of interest multiplied by time should be equal to 144. So in what time will my value be 4 times? Now, since I know the value of R, which is 9%, I can directly put it here. And upon cancellation, I get the answer as 16 years. And that's my answer number A. That's how simple it is. But I would leave it on you, since I'm not going to waste my time. You can try and solve this question by using the values. How can you do that? I'll give you a simple hint. You can assume principal as 100 rupees. So in the first situation, when the money gets doubled, amount becomes 200 and time is given as 8 years. By solving the values, you have to figure out the value of R from here. Now, once you get the value of R after so much of calculation, you have to put the values as 4 times of A is equal to A, because the value, or in fact, you can take it as P now. 4 times of P is equal to P multiply by 1 plus, since you'll be calculating R from here, you can put the value of R here, by 100 to the whole power. Now T dash, that's what you have to calculate. So since you will have P and P get cancelled, R will be known to you. After this expression, you can calculate R, which we know will be 9%. So you have to put 9 over here. And then upon solving, you will get the value of T, which is 16 years. You can compare the methods. This method is quite doable. This method is okay to work with, but then will take time. And I am sure that while you're appearing for a competitive exam, time is one of the most important factor that you have. So I would recap, I would request you to please work upon the two concepts, and that is successive percentage, and the concept of, or I would say the rule of 72, 114, and 144. These two concepts will help you solve multiple questions based on compound interest. Let's take another question. Which of the following rates of interest yield the maximum interest in 2 years on a certain sum? Now, please understand this is a theoretical question. I hope you would understand if we are increasing on time, interest amount will increase. If we are increasing on rate of interest, again the interest amount will increase. But also, if we are calculating something annually, it will be less than if we are calculating it as half yearly, and it will be less than if we are doing it quarterly, which means for the same value of rate and time, this is the increasing pattern. Now let's see what is happening in this question. So the first option is interest compounded per month at 1% per month, which means it is 1% for a month. That means for 12 months, it will be like this. And for 2 years, it will be like this. This is my first situation. My second situation says it is 3% per quarter. And how many quarters are there? There are 4 quarters in a year. And for 2 years, this is the case. Third situation says for half year, it is 6%. How many half years are there in a year? 2. And for 2 years, this is the case. The fourth one says for a year, it is 12%. So 12% for 1 year, but we are calculating it for 2 years. Now let's see what are we getting. So it is 24. I'm just taking the numerical values. 4 threes are 12, 12 twos are 24, 6 twos are 12, 12 twos are 24, 12 ones are 12, multiplied by 2 is 24. So each of them is fetching me 24. But as I said, if you keep on increasing the value in terms of the spans, like in annually it was 1 year, in half yearly it was 2, in quarterly it is 4. Likewise, if you keep on increasing the spans, the compound interest value will keep on increasing. Therefore, now you can easily guess that which one of these will have the highest value. Obviously A, because in this case we are doing it on a monthly basis. So monthly, we'll get 12 spans in a year, whereas quarterly, we'll get only 4 spans in a year. In half yearly, we'll get only 2 spans in a year, and in annually, we'll get 1 span in a year. More the number of spans for the same rate of interest and duration, more will be the compound interest. And hence my answer to this question is option number A. Let's take another one. Now this is my favorite. The difference between the compound interest and simple interest on a certain sum at 12% per annum for 2 years is rupees 126.72. Find the sum. Now look what the question is talking about. Here it's given that rate of interest is 12%. Time is given as 2 years. And it's also given that compound interest for 2 years minus simple interest for 2 years is given as 126.72 or 72 rupees. So when I put the values in the formula, because P is something that I have to calculate, 1 plus, I'm putting the formula of compound interest. Rate of interest is 12 by 100 to the whole part 2 minus P. Now this is the formula for compound interest. Let me put the formula for simple interest. P multiplied by R multiplied by time divided by 100, and that is going to give me 126.72. Now upon solving this equation, I have to figure out the value of P. I'm not going to solve it. if I'm going to follow this conventional method, I am not going to solve this question in examinations. You need to understand that even if I take P as common, my calculation otherwise also is very critical here. You can look at the calculation that I'm doing. I mean, this is not a question that can be done in a span of a minute or less than that in competitive exams. I have to solve this entire expression. I have to put this expression in denominator of this, and then I will be getting the value of P. But as I said, I'm not going to do that. So what should I do then? I have a very interesting method that I've used in so many questions so far in this particular video, and that's successive percentage, which is equal to A plus B plus AB upon 100%. Now, what does that mean? Let's see. I told you that successive percentage is only applicable in case of compound interest, because in case of simple interest, interest was calculated only on the principal value. If you remember the difference between CI and SI, that's what my explanation was. So therefore, in case of simple interest, it will be 12% and 12%. That means 24% will be the interest on principal amount when it is simple interest. What will happen in case of compound interest? In case of compound interest, we'll have to use successive percentage, which means 12 plus 12 plus 144, that is 12 multiplied by 12 by 100. So I would end up getting 25.44 percentage of principal. Now, even if I remove this just to create some space around, so this will give me 25.44% in case of compound interest. This is compound interest for 2 years. This is simple interest for 2 years. And upon subtracting them, I must get a value that is given in the question, which is 126.72. So 25.44 minus 24% will give me 1.44 percentage of principal is equal to 126.72. Now, if I remove the percentage sign, I'll have to put 100 in the denominator. Of is replaced by multiplication by P is equal to 126.72. I can even remove this decimal and get couple of zeros again. Now, when I solve this further, I'll have to cancel everything. Let's put a couple of zeros here as well and then cancel them. So just calculation point of view, I have to do it 12672 divided by 144 multiplied by 100. Now let's solve it, because I can do it with 12, 12, 12 ones are 12, 0, 5, 6. And I'm not going to use these double zeros. I can use them later on as well. Now upon calculation once again, that will give me 12 eights are 96 and then again 96. So I'll get 88. So my value for principal comes out to be 8800. That's option number B. Now please understand, while I was solving this question on your screen, but still I was able to get the answer pretty quickly by using the concept of successive percentage. So I always recommend my students that when you're solving a question based on compound interest, you must thoroughly know what successive percentage is all about. So in this particular video, I have discussed what is the difference between amount, principal and interest, what is compound interest, what is simple interest, what is the difference between them, what are the formulas, and the concept of annually, half yearly and quarterly. Then we also spoke about successive percentage, rule of 72, 114 and 144, and some questions around. In few more coming videos, we'll take some more examples from simple interest and compound interest. I hope you would have learned a lot from this particular video.
If you like this video, subscribe to our YouTube channel and hit the bell icon to never miss a video from upGrad.